Hi, thank you so much for being here, and thank you very much for this presentation. I really love seeing all almost dancing, you know, changing seats was very nice. Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Viviane. It's very nice to hear this idea that no children should be left behind. And I think we all will get out of here today thinking, let's take action. What can we do to take action? Maybe tomorrow, not tomorrow, but the other day when we are paying our MC lunch, we don't have anything real that we can do, but we can spread the word. Yes, we can spread the word. And it's so easy to reach out to the others that are in our lives and talk about this, talk about what happened here these 2 days. So let's have more to talk about. And I'm going to call on stage the extinguished guests to this panel, and I'm going to my memory is, you know, fading away with age, so I have to have a help of my computer. So we're expecting Claudia Hondo, but I think she's not here yet. Yes, she's not here yet. So I'm calling Harold Tavares. He's on his way. So thank you very much. Yes, yes, please. So Harold Tavares is Executive Director for the World Bank Group's Africa Group 2. Thank you very much for being here. Now we have on streaming Manos Antoninis. He's Director of the Global Education Monitoring. I'm hoping for an applause here, please. Thank you. So now I'm calling Aisha Diallo. She's President of the New York Network of Education for All in Africa. And that's what we want, education for all in Africa. We are all here. Thank you very much. Yes, please. Thank you. No, it's I hadn't written an introduction, but I'm not going to read it because it's not after what I heard. It's very lame. So I'm going to give the word to the ones who knows everything about it. And we are going to kick off this panel talking about the present and give some context. So we are going to talk about quality of education through cooperation and research and innovation, investing in digital literacy. We're going to talk about investing in education and what can we do together. So for start, let's, I'm going to start with you, Aisha, of course, because I think it's very important to, it's education an expense or an investment? It's an easy question.
It is not, it's not easy for me because I want...
Oh, here. I think it's on, yes.
Yeah. It's not fair because I was supposed to speak French and then they said to me, there is no translation. So bear with me because my English is not good at all.
Oh.
And, but I have a big chance. The Minister of Education from Ghana has already said everything. And Viviane also has said everything. So I don't think I will have to add anything to what they have said already, right? So, education, expense or investment? There is a saying, if you believe that education is expense, try illiteracy. Then you will see wherever you go, you cannot even pass. So it is very important that we invest in human capital. It will be equipping students with people, in fact, with skills. Fundamental, transformable, transferable, technical, and vocational. Fundamental is the 3 R's: reading, writing, and mathematics. Transferable, it is being motivated because you have, oh là là, comment on dit ça?
Maybe in French we can translate it.
Yeah, c'est parce que, can I say speak French?
Yes.
Ce sont des capacités qui permettent à un individu d'être innovatif.
It's the abilities that may have an individual.
Voilà. Et vous avez la possibilité d'innover.
So you can innovate.
Innovate. You have critical thinking.
Yes.
Vous avez ce qu'on appelle le critical thinking.
Yes, yes.
Vous avez des idées extraordinaires. Et you have what we call lifelong benefits. Educated people contribute to their families, communities, and the societies throughout. And then it's economic growth. Educated people can contribute to the growth of themselves, the family, and the nation. They have the skills needed for driving economy, growth, and innovation. It is social mobility. When you have education, you have the opportunity to transcend economic, social barriers, improving your lives. In fact, we had a comrade. When we had the baccalaureate, we were to go to the US. He did not have shoes. He had the pet, and it was November. So he had to travel with a shirt, jeans, and cravat.
No jacket.
Arriving in Washington in winter. But he was very brilliant. At the end of the day, he had the skills needed. He had a diploma. He came back, and he became a very important person. In fact, he worked for the World Bank, and he became very rich. So education will allow people to transcend all these difficulties, social status, and whatever. And also, I call education health insurance, because when you have education, you can take care of yourself, your family, in fact, especially if it is women. We were talking about demographic
Winter?
This morning. The only way to deal with demography in Africa is through education. When a woman is educated, she will be able to know the benefits of taking care of herself, her children, and she will not have many babies because she knows that she has to take care of them. So don't take anything else, just give education to African women. Then we will take care about the demographic issue. And educated people, they know the law, so they will not do things which are against the law. It's also resilience and adaptability. Education will equip people with skills. They will be skilled again and again in order to be adaptable to new environment. If you lose your job, you know that you can go back to getting other skills, get another job, or create your own enterprise. So really, it's therefore making them resilient, and they are, as I said before, they are more creative and innovative. And it's so, I call it also equal opportunity, because education can help reduce income inequality, regardless of the background or where they live. And it's a lifelong learning. You keep on learning again and again. In fact, I say that lifelong learning, education is the backbone of lifelong learning. So investing in education means equipping people, equipping young people, especially in Africa. That's what we need. And Europe and Africa, by cooperating together, exchanging knowledge, sharing results of researchers, we will be able to champion education and get all our people well educated, and they will have great life. I'm going to tell the Minister of Education, I'm ready to go to Ghana, and then convince the Minister of Education from Guinea to come, see what you have done, and how. That's what we need.
Thank you, Aisha. I'm going to you, Harold, because I want to talk about investment in education, for a more inclusive education, but I want to talk about partnerships. What can we do to join research and to join, exchange programs? You are in a place that it's a place of where you can see the big picture, and you can see if you join pieces, like in a chess play. What can you do when you join, two pieces? You get more than you if you only have one. So, how can we join efforts towards what you want? It's better education and education for everyone.
Yes, sure. First of all, I'd like to thank you for not only you, but also the President, Antonio Sá, for bringing me here, for the invitation. It's great to be here, particularly among the esteemed panelists, and here our Excellency, the Minister, and others early. And going to your question that you mentioned, yes, it's been a lot has been mentioned earlier today about partnership, collaboration, and even the chairman, Dr. Durán Barroso, mentioned challenge out there. He mentioned a lot of good things, but we still face challenge. And on the panel before us about the climate, these all interconnect each other. Mm-hmm. And they mentioned about importance of multilateral partnership, collaboration. That means not only on the climate change, but also for education. And before I go more in depth in partnership, I just want to link to what the early panelists discussed on the climate. Just to give an example, when we talk about sub-Saharan Africa, over 600 million people do not have access to energy. Education cannot go without energy. And that means if we need education, we need to solve that problem of energy. And when we hear people talking about climate change, the energy transformation, we need to look into, yes, we need to discuss that, but we still have to do the job we're supposed to be doing, which is given access to energy. That means access to energy is access to education. And saying that, for them to get access, we need all these collaboration amongst others. That means the government, not only the government, but also the multilateral development banks, where I am working now. And it's our duty, our responsibility to advocate for that. And also, it's civil society organization. It's a private sector. It's a question of principle immoral for private sector also to come on this journey. Yes, on this journey, and that's the reason that it's very important of this partnership. But I think a lot have been done, and if we look at it, particularly Europe, what Europe has done, particularly Erasmus. Yes. I think it's a really good program, and it can be expanded to other locations. But just since we're here in Portugal, it's very special. Not only I'm Cape Verdean, but I just want to give an example of partnership, because I think Cape Verde is a very small country compared with the big countries in the continent.
It's easier?
It's easier to make that connection, not only because I'm Cape Verdean, but it's very important to mention that, to show things can work. Example of COVID. Yes. And COVID, it's recent, and it gave us a lot of opportunity to see how people can come together and partner and collaborating. And I think Dr. Durão Barroso mentioned that earlier about his job at Gavi. And I want to go into scientific research things, and the partnership that Cape Verde University has with the University of Coimbra. There was a very innovative, creative program that they created, and where students can get access to university education in Cape Verde and a medical program. And they do 3 years there, and then they come to the University of Coimbra and get the last 2 years. But then they get back to work in Cape Verde in the hospital.
That's another problem, it's to get back.
Yes, it's another problem, but this is where I also want to touch base. The Honorable Minister mentioned, no one wants to leave the community. When they leave, they always want to go back. And that's, particularly with the problem with the migration, people crossing the Mediterranean come here. To be honest with you, no one wants to leave the community. They want to stay there. But they do it.
The chance to.
Yes, they do, because they look for better opportunity. I left Cape Verde when I was 18 to go for education in the United States, similar to what the minister mentioned. But the minister went back. He created school in LA, and it was a great example. But his head was always at home. I bet him that he always wants to be home. But he did that, and now he's the minister. It's the same with any student or young people who leave the country. They always think to go back. But what we're missing the proper investment in the community. We need a proper investment, the right investment, and for them to feel like they need to get back. Is that partnership?
They can go back.
They can go, but the problem they don't go because there's no opportunity.
Yes.
And they need, for example, they need the medical student that come here. When they come here, obviously they get access to the best technology in the world you can find it. But when in Cape Verde, yes, we have to understand they're still backward. And we need to make better investment in the hospital in Cape Verde. They can feel motivated to go back and put in practice what they have learned here. And that's where I want to get their partnership, particularly this platform that we were having here, share experience. It's a way that how we can transfer knowledge, technology, and service back, and then we can have the others going. And that partnership is very important to have access to it.
And you have a point there, it's infrastructure. We need...
yes, we need infrastructure. Yes.
For most, and at the beginning, we need that infrastructure. It's not just the smartphones or the 5G. We need electricity.
Yeah, we need electricity. Electricity will get us technology. For example, nowadays, everyone has the world on their hands. But in Africa, not a lot of people has access to it. And someone asked earlier about transfer fund money. You'll be surprised to see how easy it is to transfer money in Africa on the phone between people in the community. And but what they needed. They needed access to, for example, we're talking about 5G network now. Even now, in some countries, we're going to AI.
Yeah.
But some countries, some region and a community in Africa do not have access. That's where it comes to access to education too. We need to create an infrastructure and proper investment that people in a remote area can have access to internet, have access to log in on a computer, because you have computer now costs less than $100 or less than 100 euros, and access to internet through satellite. But we need to make sure those people get access to it.
Yes. So let's talk with you, Manos Antoninos. You are Director of Global Education Monitoring in UNESCO. One of the key questions and the main topic to address with you, it's about the idea that we can include all in this effort and fulfills the needs and ambition of the children and the teenager that have the drive and the motivation, and sometimes the ones that have to go barefooted or without a jacket to the winter are the most motivated children and teenagers.
First of all, thank you so much for the invitation. And I think, unfortunately, I was unable to join you in Cascais as much as I would have liked. But we are launching the 2023 edition of the Global Education Monitoring Report next week. And in fact, that gives me also the opportunity to thank Minister Yao for his willingness to participate in the launch activity. But this topic of European-African collaboration in education is very dear to me, and I really wanted to make sure that I address this audience with that topic. I think cooperation is really extremely important. But I'm not sure we know exactly how to do that in education. There are a lot of proud Africans in your audience. I'm a European, my country is Greece. I'm a proud European, and one of the things I'm proud about is the way European nations managed to talk to each other about education and learn from each other. And that's quite unique. It's an example that I think Europe could well share with the rest of the world how to do it. Let's go back how the European nations came together to establish what we now have as the European Union. Education was not part of that dialogue originally. The European Union originally was an economic community, exclusively economic community. Step by step, countries are integrating. And it took several years. It was sometime early in the 1980s when countries started talking about education. But it was not part of what we call the treaties, the agreements that bring these countries together. Sometime in the 90s, that started happening. Harold mentioned the example of the Erasmus program, which of course has been quite influential, and millions of European citizens have benefited from that. But that was in an area which is quite easy, foreign student mobility. It's an enticing prospect if the countries can afford, they support it. But countries generally do not want to talk about education because no one wants to have the other country pointing to each other whether education systems are weak in one part or in another part of the continent. So what happened? Well, Portugal came to the picture. The Lisbon Treaty that set up a strategy, a joint strategy, economic strategy for the continent and for the Union, put a set of objectives. And it was realized at that point, of course, education is much, much, much broader. It's not just about the economy, but it's put education at the heart. How? Well, it was realized that in order to achieve economic objectives, education systems needed to start learning from each other about how to get there. And that's how a network of exchange on education policy happened. That is one of the most productive. Countries come to the table and talk to each other openly, without preconditions, and simply on the basis of evidence, common joint reports supported by the European Union, they come and talk to each other. That really has been a very powerful mechanism that has really helped countries learn from each other. Now, that is what I was mentioning before, a great example of how that could be exported. Right now, the European Union and the African Union have a partnership which is very, very strong. It's building on particular areas. It's building on higher education. Obviously, it's one obvious area for higher skills. It builds on TVET. There's a lot of exchange on issues related to TVET. It has recently expanded to teachers. But there's a process right now of trying to see how we can also transfer that very positive experience into Africa of bringing countries together to talk about their education systems. I don't want to take too much of your time. I will stop here because I realize we're also a bit late. But if you give me the floor in a few minutes again, I will give you an example of what we're trying to do from our side as a Global Education Monitoring Report in partnership with the African Union to show how that can happen in one particular area, which is primary education.
We're going there. We're going there.
Can I come here?
Yes,
Because,
yes, please.
The monitoring report, which he is taking care of, Vivian Onanu was chair of. Oh. Now, do you?
Yeah.
So I was saying the monitoring report. Vivian Onanu was chair of the board some time ago. And every year we are waiting for it to get the data on the situation of education in the world. And what I will add to the partnership, cooperation and collaboration between Europe and Africa, Europe has a lot of knowledge and strong institutions. And by sharing this knowledge and what the institutions are, the results of the research, by sharing it with Africa, we will save funds and Africa will leapfrog and profit from the results from Europe, which is very important.
It's very, very nice to have some news, Manoj, of that report. It's coming up next week. Can we have a preview?
Well, it is covering a topic that you already raised, that's technology in education. And I think most speakers spoke very favorably about it. I, of course, cannot disclose much right now, but I can tell you that we have tried to turn a little bit the question on its head. The report is called Technology in Education, a Tool on Whose Terms? Mm-hmm. And we have tried to put education first. Education has challenges. And we list three. There are multiple, but we list three. The first is equity and inclusion, the type of question you asked me first. The second is quality. And there is both learning about technology and learning through technology, which is two different things. And then there's efficiency and improved management. So the report is basically trying to ask the question, where can technology help in these three areas? And once we establish the potential, what are three basic conditions to fulfill that potential, which is equitable distribution of technology to all learners, regulation and good governance, and finally teachers. How do we prepare teachers for that? Mm-hmm. So the report is global. It covers all contexts, and that, of course, makes it very complicated. But that's the intention, to bring what is common around the world, not to have some discussions for some countries, to try and bring the common knowledge from all countries, those that do use technology perhaps too much and those that still are far away from that. Mm-hmm. maybe I could say one last thing, given that Minister Yao mentioned that earlier. Our next report, which will be next year, is focusing on leadership, and we're looking forward to the partnership of all our education leaders around the world to contribute to that.
Aisha, we are running a bit late, so I have to pass to the second semi-term that we talked about. It's individual experience, because you have a lot of experience in the ground. You saw. You can talk about case studies and good examples and examples that we you can share with us, because they are examples that we can look forward.
Well, maybe I will talk about FAWE, the Forum for African Educationists. We found out that girls were not coming to school. So ministers of education and vice chancellors of education in Africa got together and they formed an NGO called Forum for African Women Educationists to promote access, retention, and success for girls, from primary education to secondary, higher education, technical and vocational. What we found out is that the barriers to education is really for the families, it's poverty. And they don't have expectations, the same expectations between boys and girls. So this is hampering really the success of girls. And teachers. Teachers do not have good expectations. They discriminate girls. You know, they always think that we don't have the boys and girls don't have the same potential, and yet they do. In fact, if they get oriented where math, technology, and informatics, they get better than boys, in fact. That's what we found out. And then at the university level, we found out that we did a study to see the profile, the gender profile in the universities. We found out that even if teachers, female teachers, had the same diploma and had
the same degree
published, they would not get the same recognition like men. And there is a lot of violence, even at higher education level. So all this was done. But that research was done in 2009 and 2010. It is, I think, time to have an overall view of the gender profile in the different universities in Africa. And I think that this should be an author possibility for Europe and Africa to do that gender profile in the universities of Africa.
It was 10 years ago, 13 years ago?
2009 and 2010.
So if you look now...
Yeah, it's time to look into it again.
Studying it.
So it's important to look into the barriers to learning from the families, from the education system. You have to look at it also.
I'm going back to you because, and I'm going to jump one step because we have, you know.
You're leading.
Yes, thank you. Because with you, I want to talk, and you again, Aisha, next. But okay, we recognize what we have, the difficulties that we have. Now let's do a swift analysis and think what needs to be done as a whole. And well, if we in swift analysis we use a wild card. What, you know, like in Portugal we have a saying. It's funny. If we find oil in Beato, it's a saying. So it's our wild cards. But if you have to find a wild card in this scenario to the future, can we think about one, a wild card that could solve it all, like, you know, like the Joker in the game that we can put on the table and win it all? Yes, yes, a trump, yes.
Yeah, I think look into the geopolitical situations happening now and the challenge that we faced recently with the pandemic. I think of the world, the discussion that is happening in multilateral, it's the we need some reforms, particularly to protect us for future challenge that, because we still have the current challenge, but there will be more challenge coming. And how we have ourselves prepared. On my capacity now as a board member at the World Bank, the discussion has been morally how to reform the World Bank, particularly get the World Bank to become a bigger and a better bank in mitigating future challenge, particularly preparing, take the lesson learned for the current challenge that we face and for the future lesson. I think one of the main thing the panelist has mentioned, we said technology. I think we need to define the public goods, particularly when we bring education. Comes up the digitalization, which is digital transformation. I think that would be a very important, particularly looking to not only the continent of Africa in the sub-Saharan, but also Europe too. How we prepare the young people for the future. And I think the digitalization, it's very important, and prepare them. Because the other public good, personally, I think it's very, very important, is job. And I think how we can motivate our young people to be entrepreneurs or even regarding training or technical vocal schools, because they're the ones who can create jobs instead of secret jobs for them. And it's the same thing that we discussed earlier about people traveling, coming to Europe or any other developing world, rich countries, and look for better life. And it's the same thing. We want to make sure that we do proper investment for example, in this case, in Africa, then people do not think to leave. If we make a proper investment, they will create jobs. For example, startups. We talk about startup, and it's very important that we have to give them the opportunity. I think that our MC mentioned early before we joined in for this section. She told the DJ to play music. Africa is very vibrant, culture, creative, innovative right now, and we can see the artists. And I was looking forward to seeing African music. You could see the difference because it's in there, yes. And I think that could be an example of creative industry for the young people. That's the case. And I give an example. Leadership is very important. And just to come back to Her Excellency that mentioned about our experience, I had experience to work on a program that President Obama created, which is YALI, Young African Leadership Initiative. And I work in an institution to welcome. Then, when I was there, it was only 25 institutions in the country, in the U.S., hosting those young African leaders. And now I believe it's 16. And that it's very creative. And I think leadership is very important, particularly for African context, for the young, very young continent. I think it's to give an opportunity to young people to carry that leadership, because I think a lot of challenge that we face in Africa, it's based on the leadership too. I think those three areas are very important, and I think those are strengths that we can play. Okay. Is digitalization, digital transformation, job creation, particularly entrepreneurship, and vocal technical school training. It's one of them. And then you have the last one I just mentioned, the leadership.
Okay, thank you very much. Manos, going back to you, the same idea. If you have to think of the future, and if you think that you can have the future on your hands right now, what should we ask for?
Well, I would say I don't believe in miracles, especially when it comes to education. I believe in hard work and collaboration. So I will come back to that issue. What we have been trying to do in the last few years was what Vivian kindly mentioned earlier. It's a report on primary education in Africa, which is in partnership with the African Union and the Association for the Development of Education in Africa, but also many other partners. FAWE, Dr. Aisha mentioned her organization, also has contributed to our communication campaign, a very, very powerful communication campaign. The governments, including the government of Ghana, have been partnering because what we do is we go with 3 cycles and we focus on 5 countries in each cycle. Ghana was a focus country in the first cycle. Now we're in the middle of the second cycle. And we try to bring from the bottom up the priorities that countries have and then bring them to the mechanisms that Africa does have and only needs to strengthen, that will make countries talk to each other. Countries need to be prepared to speak and need to be prepared to listen to each other. Solutions are not, as I said, miraculous. They will not come from outside. They will only come from the countries themselves until people understand the problem. So what our role should be as catalyzing, that's what the Global Education Monitoring Report is trying to do, a little stone to this very, very big edifice that is Africa, is to put all the emphasis in strengthening the institutions that Africa has. That's what our obligation is. That's what all our efforts should be. And institutions that bring people together to talk are those that will actually lead to the transformation of the education systems that we want. Mm-hmm. That's all I want to say. And thank you so much for the invitation. If I knew I was going to feature in a huge screen in the middle of a big room, I would have probably tried to make my trip to Cascais next time.
Thank you, Manoj. Back to you, Aisha, and we have to finish. The same idea that you are imagining the future and you need something to create that future that you want. What do you have in your hand?
First of all, wait a minute.
Yes, you have in your hand a micro.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that it is time that students from Europe go to Africa, to the universities of Africa, and do some research or at least study for a while, and vice versa. It's always our students who are coming to Europe. It's time for European students to come to Africa. It is necessary to have joint research, students from Africa, students from Europe, to work together on a project and sharing best practices, and also looking into the curriculum, especially when you talk about environment, to include the environment concept in the curriculum of schools. Train teachers, because the key to quality education is really the teacher. And engaging parents to work with the government and all stakeholders. When I say stakeholders, it's multi and bilaterals, teachers, teacher unions, because they are very strong in Africa. So all these people,
families also
together, and knowing that education is not done only by the education system. It's a cross-sectoral area. All departments in a country should be part of it. So the coordination of all this is a challenge, and the minister knows it very well.
Thank you, Aisha. Thank you very much. Thank you, Harold. Thank you, Manus. Thank you, Aisha.
Thank you. Next time I want French.
Next time, all in French. It's a promise. We have an obligation to spread the word. I'm going to finish. the same way we started. We have to spread this word. We have to spread the word. And like Vivian Onano said, it's education, if it's everybody business. So when you go back home tomorrow, try to spread the word. Thank you very much.
Thank you.